Welcome everyone, I'm the Depressed Dealer, and this is Arkham Horror the card game. This is Night of the Zealot again. I'll probably be doing some Night of the Zealot playthroughs for certain investigators that I just really struggle with as far as trying to get them functional. One of those being Amina Zidane. So for the duo I'm going to be working with this time is going to be Wendy Adams as the Clover and head investigator, and then Amina Zidane as supposedly the thug. I did try to play these two in a different campaign, and they just did so bad. I'll talk a bit. Wendy's actually generally seen as a very, very good investigator, but I guess the very first time I was introduced to Arkham Horror, the card game, I picked Wendy as my first investigator. I put a stipulation on myself where I would just use only the core set at first, just to get experience with the game first before messing around with the very in-depth deck building. The deck I picked out wasn't particularly great, but at the same time, I was also just really, really bad at playing as Wendy. And also with how my luck works, I seem to just be really, really bad with Wendy. She's kind of like Trish. Like, Trish is a very, very good investigator, but when I play her, just everything that can go wrong with her goes wrong. And that seems to be the case with Wendy as well. So, with all that, let's go ahead and just dive into these two investigators. Wendy Adams, the urchin. She's a survivor, 4 willpower, 3 intelligence, 1 strength, and 4 agility. She's a drifter. As a reaction, when you reveal a chaos token, choose and discard 1 card from your hand. Cancel that chaos token and return it to the back. Reveal a new chaos token, limit once per test. And then the Elder Sign effect is +0, and if Wendy's amulet is in play, you automatically succeed instead. So this is one of the few times where having your exclusive actually influences the Elder Sign. I think she's the first and only investigator that has done this, I think. And then she has 7 health and 7 sanity. So this ability is generally part of the reason why she's very, very good. Her stat line is actually pretty decent. Having 3 intelligence can be kind of rough as being a Clover, but her defensive stats are very, very good, making her, quite frankly, she was the very first survivor character in the game. And the reaction ability is also what makes her good, because it essentially helps you deal with the most dangerous aspect of the game, which is the random tokens you draw from doing skill checks. But when I first played her, I almost never used her ability because I for whatever reason, I saw the Elder Sign effect where you had to have Wendy's amulet in play, and in my brain, I for some reason thought I had to have Wendy's amulet out to use her ability. Also, it was just one of those situations where I was like, I don't know when it was actually good to use it. Trying her out on a different campaign with Amina, half the time I used this ability, I drew the autofail anyway. So like I said, anything that can go wrong with this character, I seem to just do horribly with. Her deck, she has a deck size of 30. She has Survivor 0 to 5 and Rogue 0 to 2. And then she has Neutral 0 to 5. She has Wendy's amulet as her exclusive, and Bandit and Alone as her exclusive weakness, and 1 random basic weakness. Mama used to let Wendy play with her necklace when she was small. Mama would tell her stories, and Wendy would spin the necklace and watch as it glittered. Then word came that her father had been lost at sea, and Mama started acting strange, drawing unusual symbols in chalk all over the house. They took Mama to the asylum, and Wendy went to the orphanage. Before they took her away, Mama gave her the necklace to protect her. Wendy stayed in the orphanage for several years before running away, deciding that she could take better care of herself on her own. All right. So, having Rogue 0 to 2 actually helps Wendy out quite a bit, especially now that they've introduced the British Bulldog gun, which can actually let you use your agility. So you could give Wendy a gun that she can actually use. Before then, she kind of didn't have much to fight with besides certain events, or, eventually you can get things like Ornate Bow and stuff, but that requires experience. I do have In the Thick of It, so I do start with 3 additional experience, and I opted to go ahead and start with 2 mental trauma. And then 2 of that experience went towards Karen's Obol, the Ferryman's Pay. It's an asset, level 1, item relic, permanent exceptional, so it costs 2 experience. And when earning experience during the resolution of a scenario, if you are not defeated during that scenario, you'll get 2 additional experience. And if you were defeated, you die. So this is essentially, Iron Man mode, but in exchange, you get some additional experience. Leveling into this is generally not a good idea. If you want to go Karen's Obel, you generally want to start with it, so that's why you go with In the Thick of It, which of course makes it more dangerous because you already start with trauma. But obviously, some people generally don't like the concept of this card because it's a situation where whoever has this, which by the way, it's unique, which means only one person can actually have this active at a time. It would be a situation where it's like, okay, you guys got to keep me alive, else I'll die permanently. And obviously, the players should take care of themselves. But even if they do take care of themselves, if they happen to fail and get themselves killed, that not only sets that person back, but it sets the entire group back because then that person has to come with a new investigator. It's just a big headache, and you come in with 0 XP, and it can be just kind of rough. That being said, playing on Iron Man does get you a lot of extra experience, which can definitely help flesh out a character a lot faster. So I'm kind of using this as an opportunity to kind of get experience with Karen's Obel. I've definitely gotten to the habit of putting Karen's Obel in as many decks as possible, just so I can get more experience with it. That and literally get more experience points, so I can actually play around with more level up cards and stuff. Because I tend to not use the more common ways to get experience for everyone would be to go things like delve too deep, but I don't like using delve too deep because it takes up deck slots, or it takes up card slots, or deck slots. And also it just kind of is a lot more dangerous for everyone because it forces a lot of Mythos cards. It also is one of those situations where you're already winning, so it's kind of one of those things as well. Karen's Obel doesn't take up a slot, which tends to make things a little bit better. One thing that's also very interesting about Karen's Obel is it is a relic that's always out in play, which means you can use it with What's-Her-Face, where she gives you bonuses when you have a relic out. So that's kind of neat. But yeah, one thing to note is it is unique, so only one player in your group can actually have this at a time, which is probably for the best anyway. Anyway, I do have 1 experience left to spend, which I went ahead and opted to get Easy Mark, so those are all set up. But before we go ahead and go any deeper about the rest of the deck, let's go ahead and talk about our exclusives. Wendy's Amulet. It's a 2-cost asset, takes up the relics. The accessory slot, it's an item relic, can commit for 2 wilds. While it's out in play, you can play your topmost event in your discard pile as if it were in your hand, and if you do so, it gets instead of discarded back into your discard, it gets put into the bottom of your deck. So this is a way to get cards back from your discard into your deck, which can be helpful. Also, you can double up on a lot of events that can be potentially very useful. Her exclusive weakness, Abandoned and Alone, is a madness weakness, which means there are certain things that can grab madnesses, which can be very dangerous. Take 2 direct horror, so it always will hit her, and then remove all cards in your discard pile from the game. I don't need them. I don't need anyone. This thing is by far one of the most devastating exclusive weaknesses. It does 2 direct horror, which is bad enough, but if you get this very late, or you're playing a deck that happens to cycle through a lot with a lot of card draw, this will just essentially destroy your deck. And which point, or your discard, and in turn destroy your deck, and you're just like, all right, well, I'm stuck now. But if you draw it early, the 2 horror still hurts, but at the very least, once you get it out of the way, you don't have to worry about it. And then her basic weakness is Internal Injury. What this will do is goes in your threat area, does 1 direct damage at the end of your turn, and you can double action get rid of it. It's very painful, but you can at least have ways to get rid of it. And then everything else in this deck is generally either ways to boost her defensive stats or ways to reduce the Shroud. She is going to be the Cleaver, but yeah, she has things like Flashlight, which can reduce Shroud. We got some old key rings, which can also reduce Shroud. We have Winging It, which can not only reduce Shroud, but you can play it from your discard. And if you play it from your discard, you can also get additional clues through that. We have Shed of Light, which is the purpose behind this. There's a archetype known as Test by Zero, and the goal of it is to get the check down to 0 and then use things to either take advantage of that. So Shed of Light is an event where if a test is at 0 and you're investigating, you can play this and completely ignore drawing a token, and not only will you automatically succeed, you'll also get additional clues at that location and any location. So very, very powerful. We got Sparrow Mask, which is just more defensive, and obviously every time she takes damage, she'll get back offerings. We got Track Shoes for more evasion and mobility. Got some Quick Thinkings, because she does get access to Rogue, of course. Some Resourcefuls, just some ways to get back some of those Survivor cards. We got Pete Sylvester for soaking and more stats. We got Matchboxes, which don't take up a slot, and they have 3 supplies, and they can be used as a lightning bolt. You can exhaust it and spin a slow apply to reduce the shroud of a location by 1 for the entire turn, which is very powerful. Of course, we got Elaborate Distraction for some extra, just deal with a lot of issues all at once. We do have some Waylays, which are just going to be here for killing a big enemy. Originally, I was going to do it for Undimension Unseen, but I didn't even get that far with Windy. So the goal here is probably to use this against the cultist over in the Midnight Mask. We do have some backpacks. These are just ways to kind of get more. A lot of our cards are items, so I'm hoping to kind of make use of it. Level 0 backpack, unfortunately, is pretty garbage, so there's not really much we can do about that. I think in hindsight, I think the better idea is just to start with 2 bulldogs, so she'll have a way to fight, and then if I do want to go for backpacks, then just swap those in at level 2. We do have some Test of Wills, just to try to fight the Mythos deck. She has 4 willpower versus 3, which is good in itself. And she does have the ability to redraw a token, so she does have a higher chance of kind of dealing with it that way. She does have a Moonstone. It's an item relic Dreamlands 3 cost accessory. It provides both willpower and agility, but you can't play it normally, and you can't commit it. It doesn't have symbols to begin with. But as a reaction, if you discard it, you can play it, paying its cost. So it goes really well with their ability, because you can discard it, then play it, as well as redraw a token. Besides that, that's kind of the gist of it. That's pretty much it. It's just a lot of ways to try to reduce Shroud, and then try to take advantage of that. So, over here we have Amina. So Amina, she's another of those investigators where I don't really know what I'm going to do with her. She's part of the reason why I went ahead and opted to go ahead and take this into Night of the Zealot, because I just could not figure out a way to actually make a deck that works with her. So, what'd she do? We got Amina Zidane, the Operator, Chosen, Cursed. 3's in all her stats. As a reaction, when you play an asset, you can reduce its resource cost by 3. Enters play with 1 Doom on it, limit once per round. This is pretty much her economy, and it's pretty awesome. But of course, putting Doom out is something I'm really not comfortable doing, so that's why I'm having a hard time playing her. Her Elder Sign is +2, and you can move all Doom from a card at your location to another card at your location. So you can literally move it onto anything, which is pretty interesting. Generally, the idea here is you want to move as much Doom as possible to a certain card and then find a way to get rid of it, or use a card that removes all Doom from a single card. She has 5 health, 9 sanity, and what is it trying to tell me? So her stat line is, again, the infamous 3 line, which can be very difficult to play around with. We've, of course, ran into it with Jenny, we ran into it with Lola, and now we're running into it with Amina. And it's a struggle. Deck size 30. Mystic cards 0 through 5, neutral 0 to 5, and charm 0 to 4. Deck building requirements: she has to have Word of Woe and Word of Wheel, which are both her exclusives. Deafening Silence, which is her exclusive weakness, and 1 random basic weakness. A refugee from French-occupied Algeria, Amina arrived in Arkham with nothing more than she could carry. 6 years later, Amina's sharp mind and technical skill placed her at the switchboard for the Miskatonic Valley Telephone Company. Soon after, she began to catch snippets of something strange while at work, distorted words in an unrecognizable language, out-of-place noises, calls that connected to nowhere at all, and dropped almost immediately. As the phantom calls grew in frequency, Amina sought answers. She found the right extension, connected to the line, and listened in. Despite not understanding a word of the alien language on the other side, She could tell the Eldritch words held real power. All right. So this deck is based off something from Arkham DB. It was essentially kind of a way to make a fighting Amina that focuses mostly on various Doom cards, which were introduced in, I think, Scarlet Keys. It opted to go ahead and start with In the Thick of It, but I went ahead and started with Arcane Research instead. So I don't have exactly the same start, but I do have potential for growth with various being able to upgrade my spell cards a lot easier. I did also opt for down the rabbit hole since a lot of my stuff is going to be upgraded anyway. We do have Dream Diary, which, by the way, Dream Diary is a charm. So we'll point out some of the charms that are added into the deck. And then I do have 2 customizable cards. I have Living Ink, which I think we've messed with before, but not too much. But essentially, I have it set for fighting, since that's what she's going to be doing. And then Summon Servitor, which is why we have this little token here for the Servitor. In any case, having 2 Arcane Researchers does start us with 2 Mental Trauma, so we got that going for us. Alright, as for the deck, her exclusives, Word of Wheel, is a 0-cost event that can be played fast, and you play it whenever you do a skill test on an asset with 1 or more Doom on it. So this is definitely leaning towards you need to play things that have Doom on it, and actually have abilities for you to do. And when you do this, you can add your willpower skill to the skill test. And then if Word of Woe is in your discard pile, you can shuffle it into your deck. And then Word of Woe is a 2-cost event that's fast, and you place 1 Doom on an asset you control to resolve its action ability, ignoring all cost, including the action cost. And then if Word of Wheel is in your discard pile, you can shuffle it back into your deck. So these 2 can kind of constantly add each other back into the deck, which can be pretty interesting. I guess technically you could potentially keep yourself from ever running out of cards as long as you can keep the cycle going, which is kind of interesting. Anyway, her weakness is Deafening Silence. It's an omen. Move 1 Doom for an asset you control to the current agenda. This may cause the current agenda to advance. If no Doom was moved, it gets shuffled back into your deck. So essentially what this does is if you have a Doom out in play, it becomes an Ancient Evils. Otherwise, it just kills your draw and comes back later. Dark Pact is our basic weakness. It's a 2-cost event. Deals go and play in campaign mode. And when you play it, you do 2 damage to investigate your location. This includes yourself. Forced, when the game ends, if this is still in your hand, you remove Dark Pact from your deck, and then you add Price of Failure into your deck instead. I don't remember exactly what Price of Failure does, but essentially when you draw it, it does something much worse than 2 damage. I think it does like Doom damage and maybe even discard or something, or maybe even horror, I don't remember. But it does all of that no matter what when you draw it, and then you remove it from play, and then you re-add Dark Pact again. So it can be pretty brutal. What's kind of nice about this though is the 2 damage can be used to get rid of anything that an ally that has Doom on them. Like for example, was it Arcane Initiate? I think, yeah, Arcane Initiate here. So yeah, as for the deck itself, it has a lot of spell cards that kind of hopefully get drawn out with the Arcane Initiate. And then I do have a variety of weapons here. We got Enchanted Blades, Ceremonial Sickles, which you can actually place Doom on them to do extra skill and damage, which is pretty neat. Also, if you ever get a kill with this thing, it actually removes the Doom off of it. So that's generally going to be one of her primary weapons for now until she gets experience. Oh, speaking of charms, by the way, from earlier, Dream Diary, of course, but we also have Lucky Cigarette Case. I don't know if this is actually the best call for Amina since she only has 3s in all of her stats, but maybe we can make it work. We do have, of course, Moonlight Rituals, just ways to get rid of Doom. We have Prophecy since we are going to be adding Doom. The Summon Servitors by themselves don't really do very much. They're 2 cost, and they take up both an ally and a ritual slot. Ally and arcane slot. And all it is it puts something in the field that you can have it take an action. And right now, at the start, the only action it has is move, which by itself doesn't really do much. But the additional cost to play this thing is you discard an asset you control. So this is a way to get rid of cards that have Doom on them. So, for example, you can get out your Enchanted Blade for free using her ability, use up all the charges on it, and then discard it using Summon Servitor. So that's kind of one of the tricks you can do. We do have String of Curses, of course, for any sort of insta-gibbing of cultists and things like that. We do have some Draw into the Flames just to get some additional clues, deny existences. We do have, of course, Cat Mask, because we definitely can get Doom onto the board. Of course, what else we got? That's kind of the gist of it. We do have Living Ink, which right now all it's going to do is give us +1 fight. But if we can get enough upgrades on it, it can definitely do a lot more. We can make it give higher bonuses, and we can actually use it to upgrade a variety of skills. If you get this maxed out, you can potentially make it give you +2 to 3 different stats. You can also make it so it takes up an arcane slot rather than a body slot, which is actually pretty neat because Living Ink is not unique. So if you are able to get something like the Vibrancy and Imbued Ink, which is 5 experience, that will make it so it gives +2 to your strength and -1 to everything else. But then you can also play both of them at the while they're both on the field, that's essentially +4 fight at the cost of like everything, all your other stats. So it could definitely do some kind of cheeky things if you really want to ultra specialize with a character's skill set, or make up for the fact they have no specializations to begin with. We do have some Defiances, but these are kind of just placeholders for other things. Same thing for the Arcane Initiate. They're going to be replaced with someone else, hopefully, in the future. We do have Parallel Fates, which is kind of a way to manipulate the encounter deck. The upgraded version can let you manipulate your Investigator deck and actually draw extra cards, though. And yeah, that's kind of the gist of it. So yeah, this is kind of awkward to use, and that's why we're just going to mess around with Knight of the Zealot instead and see how that goes. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and call it here, and when we come back, we'll test these decks out and see how far we can get. I'm The Depressed Dealer. This was Arkham Horror the Card Game, and I will see you guys in a bit.